After the camp got out, we went up to Fukushima to visit Michinori Sasaki and his wife Ryuri Sasaki, who have both done a lot of work with Fukushima and the children and trying to get the word out about what's going on and trying to really inform people beyond what they can read in the newspaper. So we arrived at his temple at midday, and he drove us out to the coast to a town called Minamisoma and a town called Keisennuma, which were both heavily affected by the radiation as well as the tsunami.
The first thing that really stuck out to me about the drive was all the people that were moving dirt. There's just tons of workers working in the sweltering heat, shoveling dirt in both manually, like with their hands, but then also through machines, and putting them in these black plastic bags. And we kept seeing these black plastic bags. We saw them on the train on the way to Nihonmatsu in some farms, and we saw them everywhere in the mountains while we were driving. And it's just crazy because the reason why they're moving this dirt is because there's high levels of radiation in the soil. And they're saying that if they can remove the 5 centimeters of topsoil, then it'll be safe for people to move back to. But then you have to start asking these questions like, where are you going to move all this dirt? Are you just going to move the entire state of Fukushima's dirt to the ocean, to another state, to China, to the United States? I mean, we don't have the technology to process it. We don't know what to do with it. So what ends up happening is it just sits there.
So the priest brought a Geiger meter with him, so as we were driving we could see the relative levels of radiation in the area. So when we left the priest's temple, it was about 0.1 millisieverts per hour. But as we got further and further into the mountains, closer to the nuclear plant, it got up to 0.6, 0.8, and all the way up to 0.9 millisieverts per hour. And the priest said that generally 0.3 and above is where you don't want to live and where the government says you shouldn't live. So why it was accumulating in the mountains is because, according to the priest, when the snow falls and the rain falls, it generally falls higher up and it falls in more concentrated, and therefore all the radiation that goes up into the atmosphere and comes down gets concentrated in these higher areas. So that seems like a problem that they're gonna have to deal with, as the radiation makes its way down to the populated areas.
The other really big thing was when we drove into Keisennuma, which is a town that was within 25 kilometers of the actual nuclear power plant. So it had to be completely evacuated. And I've never been to a town that was so dead, even though all the buildings looked totally modern and totally normal and totally usable. So there, they can go during the day to go, check out their house, clean their house, but they can't be there at night. And so it's a complete ghost town. And it was just a totally surreal experience that you just can't experience. You can't understand it unless you're in that place.
The priest told us that even though they had been evacuated and the people can't live in these places, they are not compensated any money because they're outside of the zone, the radius that has been decided that people will get compensation. So that was interesting to find out that even though people have been evacuated, they're not allowed to go back and live, but they aren't being paid any money. His wife was saying how she wanted to know, rather than people coming and doing experiments and saying, oh, we'll help you with this information that we're gathering, she'd rather have people come and tell her, oh, we care about your children, we care about how they live and how they grow up and whether they're healthy or not.
A really cool conversation that we were able to have in Minamisoma, which was a town on the coast outside of the evacuation zone, so people are allowed to live there again. Was with a priest. He and his wife, they're probably in their 70s, maybe a little older. And they've been living there for the last 3 years. And they were talking to us about how after the disaster, most of the children, a lot of the children have moved out with their parents, and none of them have really come back. And obviously, the reasons for that are because parents want to keep their children safe, and there are dangers, a lot of dangers with living that close to where the nuclear power plant is. But he was saying that because of there's no children, people are just really sad, and the whole atmosphere of the town has changed, and the environment has changed. And it's interesting because we often take for granted that children are always around, and they represent our hope and our future, because that's like literally exactly what they are. Is they're the future, they're the next generation. But this town that doesn't have children almost seems like it doesn't have a future, and he felt like there's a lot of sadness because of that, and you can see that with the suicide rates in this town has increased over the last 3 years. And he was saying in his temple alone, with the people in his temple, 8 people have committed suicide in the last 2 years. A lot of them elderly people. And so that's one of those side issues that we don't really hear about, especially in the United States and mainstream media, but it's something that's prevalent in their day-to-day lives, and is definitely an issue.